Hey there, y'all. Welcome back to Strong Inside and Out. Well, week one of my new life is complete. It was a bit strange, not heading to a school for the day, not having people directly reporting to me and asking me a bazillion questions. But I did just tell a friend, I am now living my life on my terms, aligned with my mission in life, and I am loving it so far. Next up for me, getting those much needed appointments taken care of as they come up, not waiting until it's a Thanksgiving break or a Christmas break or a whatever kind of break, but being able to do things as they are needed and having some much needed time with my friends and family, specifically my daughter. Now, as I'm recording this, last Friday, I was able to take a minute, go get my car serviced, which typically that has to be mashed up in between 65,000 other things. And not only that, but go meet my daughter and her boyfriend for dinner and not feel guilty about it, not feel like I should be working. Now, don't get me wrong. I am a very hard worker. You tell me to get something done, it's going to be done twice as much better as what you anticipated, because that's just my nature. And I will sacrifice. I will sacrifice time. I will sacrifice relationships. It's just who I am. And my daughter is truly my world. And now that she's moved to the other side of the world, okay, well, maybe not the other side of the world, but she did move to the other side of Houston, and that's almost the same. I know that I am no longer going to sacrifice my relationships, my time, and specifically being able to see her as often as I possibly can. So that brings me to this week's thoughts. I'm ready to admit I'm truly an empty nester. If you don't know, she's about to turn 33 this year and has lived away from me for about, I'm going to say about a year and a half. However, she's not lived in my home for a really long time, but she's always been within a few minutes of me. So let me share the story of how we finally got to a point of me being an empty nester. So growing up, I didn't have the best relationship with my own mother. So when I became a mom myself, I vowed to give my daughter the love and support I wanted when I was a kid. Yes, I will admit it. I probably protected her too much. I took care of things way too much, and I allowed her to get away with way too much. Now, don't get me wrong, she's always been a great kid. And I just did not want her to have to ever struggle. I just wanted to pick her up and hold her tight and make her feel like the world was a good, safe place to grow up in and to develop into the great person that she was supposed to develop in. So I never required her to work in high school. We, her father and I, secured the best things for her, and we allowed her to basically run her life, especially as she got started in high school. You see, our philosophy was if she could make the mistakes while we were still there to support her, we could guide her in the right direction so that when she went off to college or to live an adult life on her own, she wouldn't make any more mistakes. Joke's on us, but I'll get to that in a moment. I was always there for her and I would always solve her problems, which looking back at that now, I probably set her up more for failure than for good as she transitioned to college. Because what I realized is that she didn't really know how to take care of herself. And it is exactly why we started 3 different college programs, quit them all, started and quit cosmetology school, and ended up moving in with her not so great boyfriend before realizing she had to get pretty serious about life. Now, I know when she talks about her own life, looking back on that, she wouldn't change a single thing because she learned so much from it. But me looking back on it, maybe I would have changed some of the things that I did to help prepare her for a better life when she did go off to college. Well, once we got her more stable and we were back in Houston, she moved into her own place, but it was only 5 minutes from me. I loved this because I could see her anytime, but I could also send her home when we both had had enough of each other. However, this presented its own challenges as well. I knew everything she was or was not doing in her life, and she knew everything for me also. We knew who the other person was with, and it got to a point where both of us would have hurt feelings sometimes if one of us left the other one out of things that we were doing. In a loving mother-daughter kind of way, we started to get a little bit toxic. Now, let me clarify. We are very close and have a great relationship. But the toxic part, I really believe, was we were relying on each other too much. Neither of us were branching out to meet people, and we both needed something to push each of us out of our comfort zones. So 2 years ago, I truly began my journey of being an empty nester. She moved to the other side of Houston, which doesn't sound like a problem, but Houston's big, and it was now about an hour or more in traffic to get to one another. We both work a lot, so we started to slow down how much we were seeing each other, now only once a week, most of the weeks. But there was a time not too long ago that I went 5 weeks without seeing my girl. And I promise you, that was probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do. It was a huge adjustment for us both, but it brought upon some really great things for us both as well. She started going out with friends, not that she's not outgoing, she's very outgoing, but she would stay with me all of the time and put her friends to the side. I think that she would sometimes, in the back of her mind, think she had to protect me or take care of me. You know, only children, daughters of fabulous mothers. Seriously, though, I do think that because she went through all of the tough times with me during the divorce, she started to take on this characteristic of being my protector, wanting to just now go from me protecting her to her protecting me. And because of that, she did. She put all of her friends aside, and most of them still remained her friends and understood, but many of them just kind of dissolved the friendship with her. However, another great thing about us changing our locations from each other is she actually started dating. That was huge as well, because prior to that time, I think she still was in that protective mode, and she would only look for guys that she could fix or to take care of them. And I think branching off to being her own person made her realize she had to start living for her. And life is too short to be taking care of somebody else. And she truly is successfully dating. And that has been a huge step for her. And I have to say, the same thing began to happen for me. I started to have a real social life, like a real social life. And y'all, I got pregnant at 19. So when you talk about my journey, I was taking care of a baby through college, taking care of a husband, got into my young adulthood, started my career taking care of a 5-year-old to elementary school age, to middle school, to high school, while taking care of a husband who couldn't always take care of himself. And then once the divorce happened, I was just taking care of my pity, my sadness, taking care of my I don't know how to live life kind of feeling. And it took all of this time for me to be able to know that she was good before I would allow myself to really take care of me. And having a healthy social life is part of taking care of you. Now, I do have to say, I still threw myself into my work, but I figured out a way to start balancing that just a little bit more. So, all in all, good things happened when I became an empty nester. Now, I'm not going to lie though, we have had some hard times finding time to get together. I mentioned 5 weeks was our most recent road or path of not seeing each other. She's now living with her boyfriend, who I believe one day will be my son-in-law, and they're building their life together. So I can't fault her for that. It's just hard. It just is different. And it's taking both of us out of our comfort zone. We, on a normal basis now, go more than 1 week without seeing each other. And that's not always easy. But I can truly say she is living her best life. She is thriving in her work, meeting new friends, while continuing to foster those old friendships as well. She is branching out, and I could not be more proud. In addition, I've been doing the same, and I probably would not have focused on my own social life, my own relationships, if she were still living close and needing me, or at least in my mind, I thought she was needing me. Now, I'm going to tell you why I spent time reflecting on being an empty nester. I don't know about you, but I think that for the first time in my life, I finally gave myself permission to say, she's ready to fly. Now, again, I know that it is from unresolved issues in my own life that I was trying to protect her for so long, and unresolved issues in her life that she was trying to protect me. But once we finally got to a point where we had to say to each other, we're good. We have the relationship we want to have. We're building the lives we want to build. And we talk every single day, multiple times. As a matter of fact, we've been texting this morning. She's coming by a little bit later. And on the days that we don't get to see each other, I think we talk 3 or 4 times. And it might not be for a super long amount of time. It might be just for a few minutes to check in. What we do now works. And I have seen so many people and heard so many people talk about how hard it is to be an empty nester. I will never discount that. This is hard. I had to learn a new way of life. I think it's even more challenging when you're divorced and you're living alone. And I think it's more challenging when you're divorced, living alone, and you have just one child. We give so much as moms, even dads. If you're a dad listening to this podcast today, we give so much to our children. And trust me, I have no regrets about that. And I don't think anybody out in the world would ever say they regret that. But it does make life hard when you have to now pivot and start to accept that you've done your job. Now, I always say this. We are only as successful as parents as our children are as adults. Meaning, if my child needs me for the rest of my life, financially, to live with, unless it's one of your cultural type of things, I'm talking about needing, not wanting, needing. Like they cannot get it together. They cannot find stable work. They cannot have stable relationships. They're constantly needing you to provide the same kind of support as they did as a child. In my opinion, and this might make a few people angry, but in my opinion, that means we've not done our job as parents. I also want us to remember that even though it's hard, it's a perfect opportunity for us to start living for us. Now, here's what I truly believe. At 19, did I know all of the answers to the world's problems? No. And at 39, when I got divorced, did I have life figured out? Absolutely not. But at 52, I would say that because of my experiences, because of work I've done, because of being a parent and going through the process of raising my daughter and pushing her out of the nest, I think I've got a lot figured out. Not everything. We're never done learning. We're never done experiencing. But financially, I'm in a much better place. Emotionally, in a much better place. I know how to socialize well, and I know how to socialize in a way that I don't tick people off, right? You're not out there just saying whatever you want to say. You know how to have a filter, you know how to kind of be a little mature and handle conversations, especially the tough ones, a little bit better. I think the process of all of this clearly happens for a reason. Where we tend to get stuck is that we've held on to that thought maybe of, I dedicated so much life to my family. Now, what do I do? Or maybe that thought of, I don't even know who I am anymore or what I want. Now, of course, in my coaching program, Confident, Courageous, and Clear, the signature program, I talk about this a lot. And this is where my focus is because, and it really started with having conversations with women I know personally. That's how this all began. Women that I personally know were speaking about, oh my gosh, my child is leaving for college and I don't know what to do. And immediately that would bring me back to the day I took my daughter to A&M at Corpus Christi, a 4-hour drive from Houston. My ex-husband and I are driving back. First off, I didn't want to leave her. I'm sobbing like a little baby. He's not speaking because he's trying to hold back the tears himself. We're driving back in silence, 4 hours back in silence, not knowing what to say or do next. And the first thing I did when we walked in the door, after my ex-husband said, do not do it, is I went up to her room, I laid on her bed, and I just started crying all over again because I didn't know what I was going to do without her. That's normal. If you're there, I don't want you to think that you're in a bad place, but that's what I would hear so many people doing. So I know it's normal. I know it's part of the process. But where I started to brainstorm with myself and develop this program is when I would hear people 6 months down the road still saying the same thing. 1 year later, still saying the same thing. 5 years later, still saying the same things. And, you know, as I started my online talk show, interviewing middle-aged women in particular, one of my closest friends who's extremely successful in her career, extremely successful as a mom, 4 children, all of them are very successful as adults, said the words to me. Someone asked me what I wanted to do on such and such day. that it was all up to me to decide. And she said, and I didn't know what made me happy. I didn't know what I wanted. And it made me say, this is a real problem. Making change, making pivots, moving forward, continuing to grow as parents is hard. And what makes it harder is that we're also humans and we're protectors and supporters and cheerleaders and caregivers. And some of us can't get past that. And it's scary. I'll be honest. Part of the reasoning behind my divorce after the 20 years that we were together and our daughter left the home for a while, we weren't on the same page anymore. We weren't friends anymore. We weren't lovers anymore. We weren't a couple anymore. Because, and I truly believe this, we went from being a unit to not being a unit. We were never a couple. We dated for a little while, about a year before our daughter was born. That's not enough. And we were 18. He was 17. I was 18. We didn't know what we wanted in life. We were married. I was 20. We married. I turned 20 in May. We married in June. He turned 19 in July. We were babies. Now, that doesn't always happen anymore because trends are changing. But I know some of you listening to this happens for you. It's a real thing. And clearly, we just didn't have anything in common. And that's the detrimental end to all of this. So my program, it does really address all of those things to help you figure out what it is you want, but also help you figure out how to communicate that with the people in your world so you don't have to dissolve those relationships, so that you can continue to make those relationships better. Empty nester, y'all, is really hard. And I've learned a lot about it. And that's a good thing. And it's going in the right direction for me. And it gets a little less hard every day. Maybe it's just because this is the quote from the women's Duke basketball head coach. She said, we just have to learn how to do hard better. Maybe that's what I'm doing. I'm learning how to do my hard better, but it is getting better. My daughter is thriving. And honestly, so am I. I mean, look at this. I have the courage and confidence to go and quit my job and start this new business. Who knows what's going to happen? No, I know what's going to happen. It's going to be very successful. We both continue to be each other's go-to. That's never going to stop. When she has a problem, when I have a problem, when we want to share great news, when we want to share sad news, we're the go-tos. We're always going to be each other's most important. She has a great relationship with her dad, but we just have a different kind of relationship. But we're both building lives that we love, and they're a little bit separate. Learning the lesson that we were both enabling each other and not letting each other take the next steps in living life was a big one for both of us. We both had to really muddle through that. And although it took us a minute to learn that, it has made our bond stronger. And it continues to be strong. And honestly, we've learned these new boundaries. So I'm telling you, if I can make the change, the person that's so controlling, perfectionist, stuck in their ways, if I can make that change, put in these new boundaries, learn these hard lessons, so many of you can do it as well. And this is the time to move into that new phase of life for me. new phase of life for her, and maybe even a new phase of life for you. All right, y'all. Hopefully this resonated with you. And if you do need any kind of extra support, you just want to comment, you want some feedback, you just want to have a conversation about it, you can find me on social media. You can find me at Cheri Dixon on Facebook. You can find me at A Girl and Her Dog 19 on Instagram. You can comment on the podcast. You can email me. I'm going to continue to put my email in the show notes. Whatever way you need to get in touch, I'm here. I'm willing to connect with you. But the most important thing is to know, number one, you're normal. If you're struggling with this, that's normal. And number two, taking those first steps to start moving out of the misery of it into the thought of building and living a life you love is probably one of the most important things you can do. All right, as always, if this resonated with you, please feel free to shout it out to the world. Share it on social media, take a screenshot, whatever it is that helps you. I would appreciate it. And two, if you know someone who this might really make a difference for them, please feel free to share. Okay, that's everything for this week. I hope you have a fantastic week, and I'll see you next week right here on Strong Inside and Out.